Good morning, everybody who is listening now. I'm back as the teacher Jean. Today you are going to be with me in a set as usual. We are going to talk about or to study what we call reproduction. What is reproduction? What is the importance of reproduction? Where do we need to use reproduction? Reproduction, as you can understand from P1, P2, P3, P4, P5, P6, even senior 1 and so on, they study reproduction in different ways. But let us talk about reproduction. What is reproduction? Reproduction means the process by which living things or organisms produce their young ones. We have two types of reproduction, namely animals reproduction and plants reproduction. Within plants reproduction, that is reproduction which is happening in plants, and animals production is the reproduction which is happening in the animals. Types of plants reproduction, we have two types of plants reproduction. There is asexual reproduction and sexual reproduction. Asexual reproduction means the reproduction which is happening where there is no need of sex cells. When we say sex cells, are those small organisms or small things that is needed to divide itself in order to make something or some organism to grow. Mainly when it is involving sex, it means are those ones which are needed for reproduction. And sexual reproduction, that is reproduction which is involving sex cells. For plants, female and male sex cells are needed. Female sex cells is called ovules, while male sex cells are called pollen grain. Let's back on animals reproduction. Animals reproduction has only one type of reproduction which involves only sex cells, which is called sexual reproduction. But now let's come back on plant reproduction. Plant reproduction, that is reproduction which is tolerant, which is involving the flowering of plants, or its reproductive part of plant is called the flower. Apart from saying that, there are other parts of plants, but today we are talking about of its main part, which is called the reproductive part of flower. As you can understand, flower is a flower. We have two types of flower. The first is incomplete flower, and the second is a complete flower. Incomplete flower is that one which is not having some parts of flower, and the complete flower is that part which is having all parts of flower. Those parts are what? Are those which are a flower. External parts of flower, internal parts of flower, and the reproductive parts of flower. It means that for incomplete, it is missing some of that plant. The second, can talk about flower has different parts. Can name them as petals, sepals, anthers, stigma, pistils, style, ovary, and ovules, even stamen and filament. There is male reproductive parts of flower which are called stamen. Stamen is made up of filament, and anther. And there is female reproductive parts of plant which are called carpel or pistil. It is made up of style, ovary, ovules, and stigma. These are what we call carpels when they are together. There is also functions of all parts of the plant, of the flower. As I said, petals helps in attraction of pollinators, and sepals it holds and cover or keeps or protect the internal parts of the plant. Style holds in position stigma. Filament holds in position anther. Anther produces pollen grain, while stigma receives pollen grain. Then let's talk about what happens after, what we call pollination and fertilization. Pollination means transfer of pollen grain from anther to the stigma. We have two types of pollination. There is self-pollination and cross-pollination. Self-pollination means the process or is a pollination where pollen grain is coming from anther of the flower to the stigma of the same flower of the same plant. The second is cross-pollination, where the anther is coming from one flower of the same flower of the same plant to different flower of the same plant but of the same species. And the second definition is what is the transfer of pollen grain from anther to the stigma of different flower of different plants of the same species. That's the way two definitions are different, but they are saying the one thing. The second is what we call fertilization. Fertilization in plant means the union of female sex cells and male sex cells to produce zygote. Zygote means a fertilized egg. Let's come back on what we call double fertilization in plants. Why plants fertilization is called double and how it happens. First of all, there is pollen tube which is going to be formed from pollen grain. There is also pollen grain from anther. That pollen grain, they are going to be separate and form two polar nuclei. One polar nuclei will meet with ovules to form a zygote, and another two male nuclei will meet with two polar nuclei to produce what we call angiosperms. And after that, double fertilization is happening. Means that pollen grain will be separated into two male nuclei. That male nuclei are the ones which are going to do what we call double fertilization. Then let's talk about after that. Let's come back on asexual reproduction. Asexual reproduction is happening without sex cells. It means that is being done according to its ability. Then you have methods which are used in asexual reproduction. There is grafting, there is rearing, there is suckering, and there is cutting. Grafting is the way of taking what we call sione and putting into what we call stock, and that after we tie them, after sometimes it is going to happen to produce a new plant. And the rearing, it is to bend the branch of the tree and you put it into the soil, and after that it will You fix it for some days and remain it from there. It will just sometime it will develop into new thing or new plant. The third one is cutting. Cutting, that means to cut the thing which is having what you call nodes, and you cut it into pieces and you put it into the soil. After some time it will develop into a new plant. The fourth one is what you call suckering. It is to remove a young plant on a plant like a banana tree, and then you go to plant it in another way. Those are the methods which are being used in the process of asexual reproduction. But also you have what we call, after that there is what we call seed dispersal. Seed dispersal, it means that is the way seeds are scattered away from one place to another in order to develop into new young plant. After seed dispersal, what happens is called seed germination. Seed germination happens in two ways. The first way is what you call epidial germination, and the second way is what you call hypodial germination. As you can see, seed has three parts. The first part is what you call cotyledon or seed coat. Seed coat is that one which is covering the seed, and the cotyledon are those two parts for beans and one part for maize, which is covering the internal parts of the seed. Seed has two main parts inside, which are internally, which are called the pulmile and the radicals. Radicals, after germination, will develop into roots, and the pulmile will develop what you call shoot. Shoot means all the parts from stem, leaves, flower, branches, and fruits. That part is what we call shoot, and the root, it contains only roots. Apart from there are agents which are helping seed dispersal to happen. There is what we call water while moving, wind while blowing, and human being while going, and it should make it by itself, as we call self-dispersal. Importance of self-dispersal, it is to develop into new young plants or young tree in any way, in any place, to develop a new plants from some place to another where it wasn't there before. Then what we can say as a conclusion of this unit has more things. We shall talk by step. Wait for the next video, which will explain what is the meaning of reproduction, which is happening on microorganism. Thank you for being together with me.